Hello, Angel Cakes. I'm doing something a little unusual today. I'm reviewing not only a book, but also a publisher. Why? Because I am Daisy Ex Machina, the drag queen detective who investigates all things speculative in science fiction, fantasy, and horror. There's a new publisher in town named Bindery Books. On October 15th, they will debut their first selection of books, and I was lucky enough to receive a copy of one of their books and The Sky Bled by Hati. But first, what's the big deal about Bindery Books? I think it could potentially be a big game changer. Bindery Books is basically a trial balloon to see just how much power book influencers have and whether that power can be leveraged into not only selling books, but publishing books. Let me explain. Sure, people will buy books that a book influencer reviews and recommends, and by book influencer, I mean a booktuber or a book talker, bookstagrammer, or whatever is the social media platform du jour. That's a given. Even on my little tiny channel, I get comments all the time from someone who says they read a book because I recommended it, and it's a great feeling, and that's the whole point of being a book reviewer. But what if a book influencer had their own imprint in a publishing house? What if literary agents submitted books to that influencer and that influencer chooses a book to be published under their imprint? Then the publishing house will pay the author a $10,000 advance, which surprisingly isn't all that low for small publishing houses. Or heck, even some medium-sized publishing houses have advances that low. Anyway, the more you know about the publishing business, the more you feel sorry for writers. Then this book gets professionally edited and designed and marketed, and the book influencer is then in charge of leading the publicity campaign to sell the books under their own imprint. To sweeten the deal, the publisher will give 50% royalties to the author. Most publishers give royalties in the range of 5 to 8% for paperbacks, maybe up to 15% for hardcover, and then 25% for like ebooks and audiobooks. So 50% royalties to the author is what is really making people's heads explode. But what about the influencer? The influencer gets 25%, and so Bindery Books, the publisher, only takes 25% of the profits. It goes 50% to the author, 25% to the influencer, 25% to the publisher. The influencer, who is now known as a tastemaker, gets this Patreon-type account run by Bindery, where you can join for free or pay a $5 membership fee to be involved, I guess, with choosing the book, or at least to be part of the community that watches what happens behind the scenes, and they get a free ebook. For a $12 a month membership, they also get physical books. You have to be a member for 3 months to get a physical copy, so you can't game the system, but you also get your name in the thank you section of the book, so that's kind of neat. The influencer, by the way, takes 75% of membership fees, and this is all just according to the Bindery website. So what's the fly in the ointment? Well, everything is based on net sales rather than list price. List price is gross sales if you are an accountant. It's a price on the jacket of the book. Now, personally, I would rather have a contract for gross rather than net, even if it's a lower percent. If you want to know why, Google Hollywood accounting. There, they can take blockbuster movies and somehow make them earn no money and screw the writers and creators whose contracts are based on net sales rather than gross sales. Of course, that's the movie business, and nothing like that would ever happen with the book business. Right? Bindery at least appears to be transparent on their facts section of their website, and they go through what constitutes cost to determine the net. Now, according to Bindery Books, they provide what they call a holistic earnings projection, which is what the author would earn, and it comes to $4.47 per book on the first print run. Bindery would cover the costs of the print run, but after that, according to, I guess, projected costs of what subsequent printings would cost, which includes warehouse fees, that's $3.20 per book. Now, these are all projections, but let's just take these numbers at face value and assume Bindery is coming up with these numbers in good faith and that the author's agents will make sure that the contract protects the author because that's their job. But if these are good faith estimates, just look at these percentages. That means a 50% royalty actually means the first print run is actually about 23.59% based on a list price of $18.95. And subsequent print runs, the author earns $3.20 or 16.89% of the list price. Now remember, traditional publishing, the royalty for hardcovers is often 15%, so I think it's still a lot better than what authors usually get. Personally, if I were an agent negotiating, I would rather see the contract say 23% of gross on the first print run and 17% of the gross on subsequent print runs. So there could be no shenanigans around how they calculate the net, but that's just me. So let's run some numbers in a simple spreadsheet that I worked out. The author has a $10,000 advance. In order to earn out the advance at an estimated $4.47 on the first print run, they would have to sell 2,500 copies approximately. I'm rounding numbers just to make it easy. And remember, $4.47 is the holistic earnings projection. I imagine that Bindery Books would feel confident that they can sell 2,500 copies or they wouldn't be giving out $10,000 advances. This is total guesswork, but I imagine the first print run is double that. Let's say 5,000 books. I don't know that. I'm just making what I think is a reasonable estimate. If they make 5,000 sales, that means the author would get about $20,000 or minus the advance, another $10,000. Not something you would quit your day job for, but, I have a feeling Bindery would be happy with selling 5,000 copies. If they can sell out their first print run, I think they'd be fine, even though 5,000 book sales isn't anywhere near a blockbuster. I think they'd at least be profitable, and more importantly, the author will see a decent royalty check. By the way, if you were to indie publish your book, just toss it up on Amazon, you probably won't sell 5,000 copies. You'd be lucky to sell 500 copies. But that's the whole point of traditional publishing. They have the distribution, the marketing, etc. That's not to say you can't do well as an indie writer, but most indies have to write a lot of books, usually quickly, in order to build a loyal audience. And yeah, you can make bank as an indie writer, but it takes a lot of work and usually a lot of time and usually a decent amount of startup money for editing and covers and so forth. So do your own research and go into it with open eyes. But back to Bindery. Yeah, I think they can sell 5,000 copies. But what would it take to make a book a breakout? What would that look like? I would say, and this is totally arbitrary on my part, but I think 30,000 sales or more would make it a breakout. That means the author would earn that magical six-figure number. Now remember, Bindery is debuting with 4 books. If any one of these 4 becomes a blockbuster, I think that'd be a game changer. Suddenly, this experiment works. Suddenly, agents and authors who are standing on the sidelines to see what happens will perk up and take notice, and Bindery Books would end up getting a whole lot more submissions, maybe from some established and well-known writers. And of course, everything hinges on whether book influencers, these tastemakers, can actually move the needle on book sales. I don't know. No one knows. It's never been done before, and that's what makes it so exciting. I hope Bookbindery and the influencers and the authors are all transparent about their numbers and sales figures, because a lot of people are waiting to see if this project has legs. So now you know why I was so intrigued by Bindery and why I reached out for an ARC, an advanced reader copy, and I got a hard copy. And I think that's a really good sign that they sent me a physical copy, because I'm a nothing channel. I really am a nothing channel. I expected to get an ebook, honestly, but I got a physical copy. And if you know anything about publishing, publishers who are serious about promoting new releases send out lots of physical ARCs. If you want to know more, listen to the Publishing Rodeo podcast and be prepared to have your eyes opened. Another good sign is that Bindery Books are only interested in North American book rights. The author retains world and audio rights, which can be a really big thing. But what about the books? I mean, ultimately, everything depends on whether at the end of the day we have a good product. And that means a book that is good. I think one of the big flies in the ointment is the fact that Bindery Books does not appear to have their own editors on staff to edit books. In traditional publishing, an acquiring editor is the one who agents submit to and who really champions the book in acquisition meetings. So the editor really believes in the book and has a vision for the book. But here, it's the influencer who chooses a book. And I assume Bindery Book exerts some kind of oversight or guidance. But the influencer is not the editor in charge of polishing the book. Does the influencer do any editing or provide any feedback? How does that work once they choose the book? I have no idea. But Bindery Books apparently has a partnership with Girl Friday Productions, who is in charge of editorial, design, and distribution. If they're in charge of the covers, they hit it out of the park. All 4 of these debut covers are amazing. No notes. I would have chosen any of these covers for Shelve It or Shove It. But what about editing? That's kind of important, right? As far as I can tell, the editors are all freelancers, independent contractors, 1099 workers, that sort of thing, not part of the Girl Friday staff. So there's the question on how they pair the book with an editor. I mean, if an editor wants the job, they're going to say how much they love the book, no matter what, right? So I'm a little skeptical about how the books are edited. Also, in traditional publishing, there's multiple stages, which sees a different editor at each stage. So they have multiple eyes on the book. First, there's the main editor who does the developmental or content work, the big picture stuff like plot structure and character arcs. Then there's the line editor who goes through and polishes the prose. And then there's a proofreader who goes through and cleans up any grammar. Does Girl Friday provide 3 stages of editing with 3 separate sets of eyes? I don't know. If you can't tell, I'm preemptively making excuses for And the Sky Bled by S. Hati, because I've just finished reading this book. And I chose this book, by the way, because of the gorgeous cover. I really like this paper cutout look. I like these people riding a wave or foliage or whatever this is. The art is a little bit abstract, but it tells a story, which I'm always saying is important in Shovel It or Shove It. Also, the influencer for this one, the tastemaker, is Zoran Host, and her imprint is called Fantasy and Friends, which seems right up my alley. I went into this really wanting to love the book because if you can't already tell, I want Bindery Books to work. I want it to succeed. But I did not love this book. There, I said it. I think the author is talented, and I think the plot was really interesting. But I also can't help thinking that it could have used maybe another round or two of some pointed editing, especially having a really aggressive line editor, in my opinion. So let's talk about it. And the Sky Bled is set in another world where there is a resource called calor, which seems to do everything. Calor powers technology, calor helps plants grow. It's basically a metaphor for oil, but it has become scarce. And a large, rich northern power, or conglomerate of powers, have occupied and colonized a smaller nation to extract calor, which comes from the sky. The details on how calor is produced is a little bit sketchy, but apparently the sky rips open like a wound and weeps calor, or something like that. The back cover calls it fossil fuel, but how are creatures fossilized in the sky? I mean, the inside of the book doesn't say that, but it kind of threw me reading the back cover. Anyway, our story is told from 3 POVs. 2 POVs are from the indigenous inhabitants of the conquered nation. There's Zane, a woman who steals calor to give it to the slumlords. Then there's Iravan, who is a slumlord. And the last POV character is from one of the colonists, a woman named Anastasia Dracos, who is daughter to Hamish Dracos, the head of the council that runs the conquered nation. These 3 people knew each other in the past, but something happened 10 years ago that drove them apart. There's rumor of a big reserve of calor, but most everyone thinks it's a myth. And the climate, with these open wounds in the sky, is getting more and more out of control, so this whole nation is threatened. Even as the colonists try to squeeze every drop of calor they can from out of the sky. So, we have a colonized nation, 3 rivals going after a treasure, limited resources, a world where the climate is out of control. There's a lot of interesting and topical things going on here. I can see why the influencer Zoran Host chose this book, and some of the writing reaches for this poetic literary state, and sometimes it works. And that's really cool. If you can get the next literary speculative fiction author like N.K. Jemisin or Patrick Rothfuss, I mean, wow, you could run several victory laps. In this case, in my opinion, just my opinion, a lot of the times the writing did not work. That's why I said earlier I thought it could use an aggressive line editor. Someone who was not the editor, but who could come in with fresh eyes and edit the heck out of the prose on a line level, because I would rather just have someone tell me what's happening. I appreciate the pretty literary writing, but when the story doesn't make sense or it obfuscates the story, I just want to say, tell me what's going on. Let me give you some examples of what I think was meant to be a literary turn of phrase, but just ended up confusing me. Because if the writing makes me stop reading to try and figure out what's going on, that's not a good thing. Okay, listen to this. She remembered how his mouth had looked when he'd said it, syllables blending together like salt and water. What does that mean? Salt dissolves in water, right? And then it tastes salty. Does this mean his words were salty, as in like sassy? I don't think that's what it meant. But that's how his mouth looked when he said it. Syllables blending like salt in water. I don't know. Maybe it's obvious and I'm just dumb, which wouldn't be the first time. Go ahead and let me know in the comments if you know what this means. But anyway, here's another one. And this one's important because it's used more than once for emphasis. I have watched men rise and fall like leaves on wind. I will not be the air that softens a blow. So, when a leaf drops from a tree, and let's say it's caught in the wind, it sort of blows around and drifts around. And I guess I kind of get the metaphor of a man's ambition rising and falling like a leaf on the wind. But leaves generally end up floating to the ground, right? They don't come crashing to the ground. I will not be the air that softens a blow. What's the blow referring to? The downward motion of the leaf? I just don't think this works. I don't get it. But again, maybe that's just me. Now, I'm not an editor, but I am part of a writing group where we critique each other's work. And I guarantee you, I would have at least circled or highlighted both of these phrases and let the author know that it didn't make sense to me. Maybe there was a better way to say it or phrase it. And there's a lot of little phrases like that in this book where I had to pull back and stop reading, trying to figure out what is actually going on or what it meant. And there was a tendency throughout this book where I felt like I had to infer what was happening. That's why I'm saying I wish the author would just tell me what was happening. And I'll give you an example. And this is a little bit of a spoiler. Actually, no, it's not. It's not a spoiler because I don't know if this happened or not because it wasn't clear. But there's a scene where someone freezes up because another person grabs them and puts their mouth over the person's mouth. Did this refer to a prior sexual assault? I mean, did a prior sexual assault even occur? Was that why this person froze? It really wasn't clear what was going on, and there wasn't more to it to make it really feel like a sexual assault. It was just weird. Suddenly a person puts their mouth over another person's mouth. So anyway, a few pages later, this person who froze up is going to explain why they froze up or what happened in the past. And I was like, okay, now we're going to get the explanation on what actually happened in the past. And I read it, and I swore I must have missed something because it didn't say whether that person was assaulted or not. And I thought, maybe I missed it. So I went back and I reread it a couple times, and I still don't know. Maybe, probably, but we have to infer it, and that's what drove me nuts. Just tell me what happened in clear and concise language. Just tell me. Now, I know writers are told, show, don't tell, but gosh darn it, sometimes you just need to be obvious. The other big problem I had was I didn't find any of the characters likable. Zane, the thief. She was morose, depressing, a loner, self-pitying. I really did not like her. I felt sorry for her, but feeling sorry for a character does not make them relatable or likable. I found her chapters really not very much fun to read. Iravan was the slumlord. Now, I think it was a huge mistake calling him a slumlord because when I see that word, slumlord, I think of a rich landowner who exploits poor people by renting them homes that are barely livable. To me, that's a slumlord. But here, in this world, a slumlord is lord of a place called the slums. So I had to keep recalibrating what a slumlord was. Anyway, Iravan is one of the rebel leaders, I think. I was never sure what his age was, or really the age of any of the characters, which kind of was an issue, but Iravan is the most honorable person in the story who's trying to do the right thing, which isn't what you usually think of when you hear slumlord. Then there's Anastasia. She's the most interesting of the POV characters. She's suffering from some kind of illness caused by Calor. 10 years ago, something happened that put her at odds with Iravan. I thought there was going to be some big world-building reveal of why she turned away from Iravan, but no, it's something more personal. I kind of wish the whole story was from her point of view because, like I said, she was the most interesting. Maybe this could have been a cool anti-hero book. Also, I'm not sure any of the characters had a character arc. They all seem to pretty much be the same person as when they started, though maybe that's not fair. They did have some big scenes at the end with some interesting twists, and maybe that showed character growth, but for me, overall, they felt flat. But hey, maybe it's only me. Maybe they didn't for other people. If you don't know my channel, I either recommend a book by blessing it or don't recommend a book by zapping it. In this case, I have to zap And the Sky Bled by S. Hati. Look, I hope this book has a lot of sales. I really want Bindery Books to succeed. I think if any of these 4 debut books knock it out of the park, it will be a game changer. Maybe, hopefully, it will at least prove that publishers can afford to give writers better royalties. My big concern is the editing. Are these books getting the multiple stages of editing by multiple editors that they would get in traditional publishing? I don't know. I've only read one of their books, and this book wasn't for me, but maybe other people will love it. I don't know. There are 3 other debuts coming out all at the same time. All of them look interesting. Maybe they are terrific books. I don't know, but I want to know what you think. Let me know down in the comments, and while you're there, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. I know I keep saying this, but I really, really want Bindery Books to succeed. A lot of its potential success will rest on the shoulders of these book influencers. This will finally prove without a shadow of a doubt just how much influence an influencer has. And if they succeed, these influencers could conceivably make a buttload of money. Not just from the books, but from the subscriptions. I mean, if an influencer or tastemaker has a bunch of successful books under their imprint that earns money year after year, that accumulates and snowballs and really adds up. Backlist books are how many agents and writers and publishers make money long term. I wish nothing but the best for everyone. Until we meet again, may all the books you read be blessed.